Good evening, Patriot Nation. Today is January 28th, and it looks like Commie Joe is going to get his wish, and he is going to get an appointment to the Supreme Court. More countries are on high alert after new attacks. China threatens all out war over Taiwan and even crosses into Japanese airspace. Attacks in Yemen, Baghdad, and Dubai add to the already high tensions across this globe. And ongoing tensions in the Ukraine continue to escalate. We'll talk about all this coming up on tonight's show. This is Patriot Nation. First up tonight, with Justice Breyer stepping down from the Supreme Court, it looks like Commie Joe is going to get his wish to appoint a new Supreme Court justice, which has many people speculating on just who that nominee will be. He has given us a little hint saying that he wants to appoint the first black woman to the Supreme Court and make history with his nominee. I believe that there are three top contenders who the deep state plan to put into that position. If you could please take a moment real quick and make sure that you've hit that subscribe button down over there. And then also, if you could take a minute and make sure that you share this video out with anyone that you know that would enjoy or find value in this right of center message. So, like I said, Justice Breyer is announced his retirement from the Supreme Court. And with that, we're going to have a spot open up, and he has, I believe his resignation is going to be effective. Is it in the next couple of months? See if it says here. I don't remember exactly what they said. Yeah, there it is. He's going to nominate the first black woman to the Supreme Court. I don't remember when his resignation takes place, but the way it sounds is that he's going to try to have his nominee sometime around the middle of this year. So his plan, or the deep state's plan, is to get that nominee on the courts before the midterm elections. So the first person who I think the deep state is going to have at the top of their list for nominees is former Clinton Attorney General Loretta Lynch. She is best known probably for the secret tarmac meeting with former President Bill Clinton. I believe that she was heavily involved in the whole attempt to try to destroy President Trump. She's been heavily involved with the deep state and the Clintons for years. And there was an extensive investigation into her secret meeting out on the tarmac with former President Bill Clinton, and many of the the information around this has led to a lot of suspicious activity. Not going to have time to go over all of it or really much of it on tonight's show, but one of the interesting things is that um, with this investigation, we have the reporter that broke this case, this information, once again crossing the Clintons and dying of suicide. Again, kind of a mysterious death that was ruled to be a suicide, but it's funny that once again you have somebody that has crossed the Clintons and mysteriously dies after the fact. But I think that Miss Lynch was an instrumental part in a lot of the fake news and the fake reports around Trump and the whole Russian collusion thing. And based upon their deep history and being associated with the deep state players, I think that she is going to be at the top of the list, if for no other reason than a IOU being fulfilled for her service to the cabal. Next up is another deep state operative that many of you will recognize, and that is good old Susan Rice. Now, again, this is another well-known deep state operative that many people believe is actually one of the people that are truly running the Commie Joe administration from behind the scenes. Rice and Obama were very close and are very heavily involved in pulling the strings of this administration. And so, because of her ties to and loyalties to the deep state, it puts her, in my opinion, at the top of the list for possible appointment to the Supreme Court. Ethnically, she fits the bill perfectly into their plan of appointing a black woman to the courts. And then her ties and loyalties to the deep state only add to her qualifications. And it makes a perfect person for the deep state's plan to maintain control. And so putting her into a position of power like the Supreme Court makes perfect sense. And last but not least, we have good old Kamala Harris. We all know that her current position is highly unpopular and that she's highly ineffective in this position, and that there are a number of other people that are vying for this position. And with Commie Joe's popularity tanking in every single poll to the point that he has now become the most unpopular president in the history of this country, surpassing even Richard Nixon and Jimmy Carter, And Harris, being one of the most unpopular candidates that ran for for the Democratic nomination, I think at the height she had maybe 9% of the polls, and I think the average was closer to like 3 or 4%. And so she is, basically a huge boat anchor to an already sinking administration. She doesn't bring anything to the table intellectually. She doesn't bring anything to the table popularity wise. And many would say that in both cases, she not only doesn't bring anything to the table in those cases, but she's actually taking away in those things. So, in order to have some sort of chance of recovering for 24, they have to have a platform that is going to be more appealing and that they're going to hope to get more votes than Biden Harris. So I think that strategically wise, moving her into a promotion of being on the Supreme Court, freeing up the VP spot for someone else. And I think maybe even the bigger picture is that you push her up to the Supreme Court, you bring someone else in who is going to be more popular, then you force Commie Joe out, move that person up to the POTUS position, and then backfill that with another even more popular candidate or equally popular candidate. And then in 24, you have this new ticket that is the incumbent. Seems like their best hope to being able to compete in 24. Because if any of you have been following the rash of incumbent Democrats that are not going to run for reelection in 22, the Democratic Party has got to be in full panic mode right now. You have the Commie Joe administration's poll numbers tanking to some of the lowest of any president in recent history. You have, I think it's up to like 28 or 29 incumbent Democrats that are refusing to run for reelection this year. And that means most likely, based upon a lot of the information that is going around as far as early polls and all that stuff, I mean, it is a red tsunami that is going to take place in the midterm elections. So that means most likely that they are going to lose control of the House. They are going to try to do everything in their power to try to firewall the presidency come 24. Because if Republicans take the House, they basically deadlocked the Senate. They may even pick up, I don't know if there's any Senate that's running in 22 or not, but let's say that, they take the House in 22, they take the presidency in 24, and either take the Senate in 22 or the Senate in 24, they're going to have a clean run of everything. And so their best case scenario from the Democratic standpoint is if they can save the presidency and maintain the split in the Senate, that's kind of their best case right now. And the only way to do that is to try to get a ticket that is going to be gigantically more popular and appealing to their voters, and especially to the independent and moderate voters. And that's not the current ticket, ladies and gentlemen. We all know that tensions are very high around the globe right now between all of the protests taking place by people that are fed up with all of these tyrannical mandates in their countries. You've got the 44-mile trucker convoy up in Canada with all the truckers that are protesting all of the mandates that are being imposed on them, even though good old Justin Trudeau is, oh, it's just a small protest. I'm sorry, when you have thousands and thousands of truckers that are forming a 44-mile long convoy, and the tens or hundreds of thousands of people coming to see and support these truckers, that's not small by any stretch of the imagination. And you have China that is continuing to be aggressive over Taiwan. And while I don't think that they are going to do anything until after the Olympics, because they aren't going to want to jeopardize the Olympic Games over this, but you've basically got China saying that they are prepared for military action with the United States if Taiwan continues its road towards independence. Chinese ambassador warned in his first interview since arriving to the U.S. last July that the U.S. will likely face military action from China if Taiwan continues its road to independence. Taiwan declared itself independent from communist Chinese after the communists drove the sitting government out of mainland China in 1950. Today, China continues to declare Taiwan as its province, and now they are threatening the U.S. with war over the island nation. And you've got Taiwan continues to report large-scale Chinese Air Force incursions into its airspace. This is from Reuters. Let's see. Ministry saying the Taiwanese flight scrambled to warn away 39 Chinese aircraft in the latest uptick in tensions. And from the Taipei Times, China flexes its muscle at the U.S. and Japan. Incursions of 39 Chinese warplanes on Sunday and 13 yesterday were likely in response to U.S. Japan exercises off Okinawa. Most of the 39 warplanes were fighters jets into Taiwanese airspace. 13 more entered it the other day. And the scarier part of this maybe is that, I mean, they are even, according to Stars and Stripes, Japanese pilots are responding more frequently to incursions into their airspace from China. So it's a pretty precarious situation when you have all of these protests taking place in, dozens or hundreds of countries around this planet, where the citizens of those countries have had enough of the tyrannical mandates being imposed by their governments. You've got tensions that are already high because of Russia and Ukraine. You've got China that has been going back and forth with posturing over Taiwan. You've now got them having incursions into Japanese airspace. And on top of all of that, in the last couple of weeks, you have also had attacks taking place in Baghdad, Yemen, and United Arab Emirates. And I believe a lot of these attacks and posturing and all of this is basically due to the fact that Commie Joe continues to try to lead from a position of weakness. And he has shown a very apologetic and a very weak foreign policy that has emboldened not only our enemies, but even countries that don't necessarily have a beef directly with the U.S. China, I think, is one of those that, for the most part, I don't think that China necessarily has a direct conflict with the United States, but they definitely have views on Taiwan and whether it should be part of their control or not. And the fact that they know that the U.S. is extremely weak and that the leadership within the United States government and military right now is a bunch of weak, spineless pussies. It's emboldened them to enact their will. And so now you've got attacks that are taking place in other countries because they know that the U.S. is weak. You've got attacks on the UAE. According to France 24 here, a new chapter has begun in the Yemen conflict. So now this is spilling over, into the UAE as Iran backed. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Rebels fired ballistic missiles at Abu Dhabi and Dubai on Monday. Again, we talked in my last video on the 26th of how Iran has its proxies striking out because, again, Iran doesn't fear Commie Joe and his administration because of their position of weakness that they keep portraying and keep pushing to the world as America apologizes for everything. We keep arming our terrorist enemies. From Al Jazeera, rockets hit Baghdad airport compound near U.S. airbase. They damaged an out of use Iraqi Airways plane. At least 3 rockets landed at Baghdad International Airport. It's ridiculous. I mean, you got more. This is from Reuters again. The Yemen rebels have another missile strike. UAE says it intercepted 2 ballistic missiles. The UAE has become unsafe, is what the rebels are telling investors. Yemen largely seen as Iran Saudi proxy war. Again, Iran is not afraid of any retaliation from the United States. This is from Business Insider. tensions around the whole Russia-Ukraine situation appears to be on the even closer to the brink of war because Russia has begun moving blood and other medical supplies near Ukraine, possibly in preparation for a major military operation, according to Business Insider. Russia has added blood supplies to its military buildup on the Ukraine border, Reuters has reported. Again, this could mean another sign that it is planning to invade somewhat soon because this blood supply could be used to treat casualties if Russia invades. Going back to Al Jazeera, they have a number of articles again on the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Of course, the Commie Joe administration had a presser earlier today with the two idiots. I'm not sure what these guys are trying to do. Sometimes they talk tough, sometimes they talk weak. They give such mixed signals. I'm not sure that they even know what the heck they're doing. The interesting thing I saw when I was reading this is this right here, where the Ukraine is accusing the U.S. of hurting the economy by stoking panic over war. It seems to me that by the actions that Russia has taken by positioning their troops and by moving blood and everything else that's taking place over there, it surprises me that they're accusing the U.S. of stoking the panic of war. Is the situation that is taking place over there not the situation that we are being told by the communist propaganda networks and by our own government? It sounds to me like the Ukrainian leadership doesn't have the same view that we are being told. And again, none of us have access, to the satellite and reconnaissance footage to know if they're not positioning troops like we're being told. I do know from watching the flight trackers myself and watching Monkey's videos over on MonkeyWorks's site that there is a lot of reconnaissance taking place around the Ukraine by manned and unmanned reconnaissance craft from the United States and from NATO and the EU. So they are having a very watchful eye on what is taking place over there. But seeing as though none of us have access to that reconnaissance information, we don't have direct access to the satellite photography. And so when places, whether it's governments or the news agencies, are saying that Russia has tanks and troops and they've got 100,000 of this and they've got, armored vehicles here and they've got tanks there and they've got aircraft and ships in these locations, how am I to say yes they do or no they don't? Until someone come out that is on the ground and can say that, hey, here I am, here's video of this area that is supposedly having all of these troops staged and there's no one there. none of us really can dispute that. But I don't. Uh, I don't know how accurate some of this stuff is. There's been a lot of conspiracy that, Russia is, and especially Putin, are fighting against the cabal and the one world government. So it's a logical explanation that if that were the case, that they are going to want to try to do things to weaken Russia, weaken Putin, to undermine their efforts in destroying the whole deep state. So we all know that the deep state uses wars and conflicts to promote their agenda and to push their war machine and their funding and all of this kind of stuff. And they weren't able to do that under Trump. And so now all of a sudden you have Commie Joe in charge and all the deep state players back in charge. And just like magic, the war machine is spinning up yet again. And we've got the U.S. sending troops. We've sent in the Truman Strike Group to support NATO. We all know that a lot of the whole NATO stuff is nothing but freaking deep state. The whole freaking, military infrastructure that has been pushing these wars is all deep state backed, and it's their way of basically laundering money. So when you have the president of the country that's supposedly on the brink of being invaded by Russia saying that we're basically using scare tactics to push this war, it makes me wonder what's really going on. Is it all designed to distract from what China is doing with Taiwan, with China moving all the resources and money, down into Cuba? I've noticed there have been some reconnaissance aircraft that have been running patterns south of Cuba, off the coast of Venezuela and in through there. So it makes me wonder if we're missing something. Again, the deep state is very good at the whole smoke and mirrors game. And so if they're trying to draw all of our attention over to the whole Russia Ukraine situation, and everybody's looking over here, what's really going off back over here that they don't want us to see? And so I think that that's kind of the important thing that everybody should be looking at right now is, what are they trying to distract us from? We've got the whole Russia Ukraine thing. We've got the Supreme Court justice thing. We've got all of these attacks taking place in the UAE and Yemen and Baghdad. You've got the whole China Taiwan thing. Are these all actually just distractions that are designed to keep us busy from what's really happening? You know, is a lot of the things that are taking place maybe behind the scenes all part of the plan to take down the deep state? There's been a lot of talk that a lot of this stuff in taking down these scumbags needed to wait a year before anything major started to happen. Well, we are now officially, 8 days past the year. And the last couple of weeks, things have really started to heat up. So let's keep our eyes peeled, folks. Stay prepared, stay informed, stay safe. For God and country, good night.